Supportables were getting closer and closer. Week 9 was certainly an exciting one, and in our pool, a lot to talk about. We possibly had our first clincher. We had some underperformances and people ready to go, and then we definitely had some dominant performances. 3 teams were plus of 160. Sadly, 2 of them played each other, but we'll get to all that stuff after a quick look at some stuff from the NFL. After the last little while of just the better teams almost always winning and only a few kind of upsets or runs, I guess we had a bunch more in week 9, didn't we? The Panthers, are they actually okay when they have an okay quarterback? Pittsburgh, who went from looking not great defensively, was definitely good enough defensively. Minnesota occasionally plays okay, I guess. At least the Lions think so. I don't really know if there's like a return to form or exactly what went on in terms of point spread, but at least there was a lot more games to talk about, and yet we almost always end up talking about the same game every single year. I probably could have gone back to last year's video talking Bills and Chiefs, and the same thing just seems to keep happening, and no one really kind of makes a reaction to it. The Bills won in the regular season game. That was fine. It was a good game. I mean, the Chiefs aren't looking amazing, but they've been playing well enough. But we just kind of assume that the Chiefs are going to make the playoffs and that the Bills are going to lose to them in the playoffs because that just seems to be what happens. So there wasn't really any kind of shuffling of the order. The only thing I'll say, though, is the Chiefs technically, I believe, are 8th right now and only 7 make it. So they might want to start playing like the Redwoods are supposed to be as opposed to the Ficuses that have been coming out recently. Other than that, we had a pretty electric game in Chicago and Cincinnati going at it, and you got to feel for Cincinnati. I'm actually starting to wonder if Joe Burrow maybe isn't a great quarterback, but just anyone in Cincinnati could be a great quarterback. Flacco, it's not like, I mean, he did win Comeback Player of the Year not too long ago, but he was brutal for the Browns. But then again, it is the Browns, and I do have to make a weekly reference of them being crap. But at the same time, he can't be happy. He's putting up amazing statistics, and yet they're just finding ways to win. It's almost like instead of just re-signing everybody on the same key offensive positions, they maybe should have thought about defense, but whatever. Just hit some dingers. On the other side, too, we started to get some stuff creeping into our fantasy realm there. We had Washington's big injury. Daniels, that was kind of gross. Kraft, I was too nice to him last week, and then he hurts himself pretty badly after pretty much winning a couple weeks in the last few. He definitely lost it for some people. We had some trade deadline stuff, which normally doesn't happen. The Jets are pretty convinced that they're rebuilding, and actually now they're going to have 5 number 1 picks in the next 2 years. And that's the second time they can say that in the last 5 years. 21 and 22, they had 5 first-round picks. And actually, had they picked a better quarterback, we might not be talking about them of doing it again. So lots to think about and lots to talk about. Coming into Week 10, fantasy-wise, we are really getting to the crux of our season here, and not a great week for probably the second most impactful bye week of the year. We had Buyapalooza with the 6 teams. We only have 4, but 3 of the 4, Tennessee, if you've been banking on them, that's kind of shame on you. But Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Dallas, these have been a lot of our offensive production over the last few weeks. I mean, we can talk a lot about Dallas and Cincinnati not stopping anyone, but they sure were scoring a lot. So this week's scores in a super, super important week might be all over the map. Might be having to go to the bench, maybe even the waiver wire. Either way, let's actually stop talking about football because now we're getting to the point where fantasy is where it's at. Let's go to our leagues. It happens at least once a year. The top 2 scores for the week bumped up against each other. Kickass has been doing just that recently. Might be one of the hottest teams, well, except for, we have an undefeated one still. But Pamela, just the wrong time to bump into them. You pointed that out in the chat. Your wide receivers did great, even though they didn't ring the bell there. Even running backs doing quite well. Bijan, though, it's the second week in a row that he's kind of let you down. Sam Laporta, you actually had 2 tight ends. Laporta was the tight end 3, and if we look at your bench, Andrews was the tight end 5, but you did make the right call there. Rico Dowdle as well, you also made the right call. Him and Chuba have been splitting a little bit more, but Dowdle was the running back 2. But on the flip side of this coin, we had the running back 1 in CMC. We had the quarterback 1 in Caleb. I mean, everyone can go against Cincinnati, apparently. But he had a monster week. Even Geno Smith scored 26. I can't even remember the last time that happened. Now, you did leave some points on the table. Down here, you had the wide receiver 3 on your bench. So you could have actually scored a few more. Huge win for you guys, Kick-Ass and Pamela. Top 4 is still not too bad. And do remember, the total points scored is going to come into play because I do expect some ties as we finish things out. We had 3 teams this week in the 160 club. Raw Doggers, you are the other one, and in 3rd place, looking pretty good. Jackie, I mean, you kind of also forgot about a few things, but just super bad luck. Kamara got out of there early. Both of your quarterbacks left the game with injuries, and we'll see kind of how things work out in that regard. Your defense was on a bye. I think there was a mistake on that one. You weren't paying attention. But you did have the wide receiver 2 in T. Higgins. Like I said, Cincinnati just scoring like crazy. On the flip side of the coin, Raw Doggers, you had the QB 5 and then the tight end 1 and wide receiver 1. That's a couple. Drake London has been giving and taking away the past few weeks. He goes from top 5 to just a horrible performance and back on up to the top 5. In fact, the number 1, as I mentioned. So huge week for you. That was a big win. We're getting closer and closer. I think we're going to see when we go to standings a little asterisk around one of our teams now in the next few weeks. Playoffs are going to start shaping up. So if you can move up to number 2 and catch kick-ass, you get the bye. But right now, top 3, can't really complain too much about that. Jackie, you're going to have to make some big moves because you lost a lot of players and you really can't afford to lose again. Same record, but way different in point score. This was a big week for me. I actually, taking it back, Jackie, you probably could lose again. You just probably shouldn't because there's a bunch of us outside of the playoffs with 3 wins, and someone's going to have to make a push. Norcan, tough one here. You went over predicted. You had some decent outputs, but no one really went off. And that was the problem with your team is you really needed 1 or 2 standout performances, and with the buys you were dealing with, just couldn't really hack it on that one. For me, I had the kicker 1, woohoo, and my quarterbacks were really all that did anything. And when I win, it's because my quarterbacks. As you can see, not other people at all. So big one for me. We're technically tied, but like I said, and we're going to see when we go into standings, points scored are going to matter. Bench, you were underpredicted, right for the taking, but Malakovs just couldn't pull the trigger. They had an even worse one than you did. In this one, actually, though, Malakovs, you had some highs, lows. Goff was okay, but you definitely needed 1 or 2 people just to show up and bring it down. But looking at Jonathan Taylor as the one that was the most disappointing, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but this is an epic offense that just fell flat against Pittsburgh. On the flip side of the coin, defending champions, you did quite well. Devontae Adams was the wide receiver 4. You had the tight end 3, and you did have the RB 5 in Jacobs. So just enough to get by. Again, kicker and defenses were not a forte here. And looking at our bench, could have had some help here, but realistically, kind of not a super ugly win. You were almost at predicted, but Malakovs, had you would have put a little bit ahead here, just had 1 or 2 stand-up performances, or Jonathan Taylor do what he normally does, that would have been a big win. Don't cry about it too much. You got the 4 wins, which right now gets you the 6th spot, but I wouldn't leave too many more weeks like this. Bench, did you clinch? I guess we'll have to find out in a minute here. 4th and Conquer, Monster Week 150, well done. And like I keep saying, we're going to look at these ties in just a second. Ball too well, you fell to the worst performance of the week. You weren't predicted much due to some bye week issues, but you definitely underachieved. The Tucker Kraft injury hurts a lot. You did have the double tight end set, which was interesting, so we'll have to see how that pans out now that you're down to a single tight end, so you should still be okay just to see how your bench works. On the flip side of the coin, 4th and Conquer, you had the RB3, the QB2, the kicker 4, all things fantastic. Actually, QB2 and QB3, both of your quarterbacks were top 3, and backup running back was a huge pull. If Swift stays out, this is going to be a game changer for you, and you're going to need some games changed because obviously you're in that pool I keep talking about of the ties, which, you know what, we got this. We figured this game out. Let's just jump to the standings to see what I'm talking about. Well, I think we knew the asterisk is there. That means bench, you have made it at least into the playoffs. Kind of surprised it took this long. 9-0, well done. And it really does shape the rest of it. Under 500 is still good enough to be in 6th spot, and the rest of us are all tied. So it's really going to come down to the points you've scored and who you play in the next couple weeks here, because obviously we only got a few weeks left. Looking at week 10, this is a funky one with all the bye weeks. You know there's going to be 1 or 2 random performances that completely shape this. It wouldn't shock me if this was a lower scoring week on average. So if you can put your predicted, that might be good enough to win this week. We're down to our last 5 weeks here, so if you were going to go on a run, now's the time. Like I was showing in the standings, nobody was out of it, but if you haven't been scoring a lot of points, looking at this guy here, you're going to want to go on a bit of a run. And anyone in the playoffs, you just got to keep winning to stay in, because obviously people have to come and climb. But as you see, we're all playing each other, so it's going to be tough. Going to come down to matchups, and this week, as I said a couple times, is going to be a wild one with so many key people sitting out. So I'm going to say best of luck. I'm going to kind of mean it, but I'm super excited about what Week 10 has in store.